they were talking a little bit of crap to me, and I had to eat that. I obviously gave my words back, and whatever. But it was something for me to overcome. But I eventually got back on my feet and did what it is I had to do. You're watching and listening to the Indy Drills Podcast. It's a DB podcast. We talk about secondary play coverage and all things DB and pass coverage here on this Indy Drills Podcast. I don't know. Look, I've said this before. I don't know if there's another DB podcast out here. Even if there was one or more, this is the place for you to be. As always, sponsored by 101 DB Tips. It is the ultimate DB reference guide. If you play DB, if you coach DBs, this is your book. You got to get your hands on this. Link to it in the description down below. Don't want to labor into that too much. I mean, you either get it or you don't about this thing right here. It's just going to help you. And I'm all about offering you guys resources. Coming up on the show today, we're going to have a little bit of DB news leading into this. I've gotten some great questions. Can't wait to dig into those because it allows me to run into story time about playing defensive back. And then a DB mentality. What does that mean? How do you get it? Should you have it? And is that the key to success? We're talking about those things and more today on the Indy Drills Podcast. So jumping right into the news, it's time for NFL cutdowns. And one of the biggest cut names out there was Shiloh Sanders. You guys have all come to love the Sanders family, from Coach Prime on down to Shiloh to Shadur and even Deion Sanders Jr. It's a family thing out there in Colorado. And we've all followed Shiloh and watching what it is that, his journey into the NFL. And it seems that has come to an end with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Adding to this was his final preseason game on Saturday. He got into a mix-up with a Buffalo Bills wide receiver and ended up throwing a punch. Not the first guy to do that, but when you're Shiloh Sanders, it is going to get publicized everywhere. So for whatever he did in that game on Saturday, the only clip you are able to see, if you didn't watch that game, was Shiloh throwing that punch at the Bills receiver. It just seemed to bait him into that, and, Shiloh happened to take the bait. Whether or not that contributed to him being released with the team, that will be open for debate. I'll say this, it didn't help. So if you're a young defensive back out there trying to make your mark, one of the biggest things you could do is just show some composure, because you're going to need that out on the field. Now, mind you, he's being irritated by the player, and Shiloh is indeed a physical player. The response to that should have been somewhere within the confines of the rules and playing the game. Maybe you catch him on the next play, whatever, or maybe you just find a way to get up under that guy's skin. But for you're throwing a punch, hitting a guy in the helmet, you didn't affect him. It doesn't seem like this is the kind of guy that would be embarrassed by getting punched in the face mask, because the first thing he did was turn around and point to the referees, who duly threw a flag. So something like that obviously didn't help Shiloh. I don't know that he had a bunch of playmaking opportunities during the preseason in the games that I was able to watch, or, briefly didn't really dig into the all 22 of the Tampa Bay Buccaneer games this preseason. But whether or not he had those opportunities come his way or failed to manufacture them, there just wasn't enough there, I guess, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to keep him on the roster. Now, mind you, we all as fans out there get to just see the games. But there are also practices there as well. And so, I guess not enough done there to, give him a roster spot. And sometimes it just really just boils down to numbers. Whether you fans out there want to believe this or not, sometimes, a lot of times, NFL teams will take on too much of a position, and they want to just throw like spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. They know for a fact they have a bunch of good players here at a certain position, and they're not going to keep all of those guys, and they're just going to throw them all against the wall and see what sticks, what fits. And then, that ends up and results in some really good players getting cut. I am on board saying I think Shiloh Sanders can play in the NFL. So hopefully he gets an opportunity with another team, one where there's perhaps a better opportunity for him and he gets to show what it is that he can do Any way you look at it, though, I really think his role there, had he been able to make the team, and probably with any other team he gets on here initially, is going to be as a backup, probably a whole bunch of special teams, and then, there will have to be injury or some other kind of opportunity for him to get in there. But I personally would love to see him get an opportunity with another team. You guys could tell me down in the comment section how you feel about that. Would you like to see him on another team? Do you think Shiloh Sanders can play in the NFL? Would love to hear from you guys down there about that. Looking forward to seeing what happens there. This is not a cut. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the offseason. An interesting development that took place over the weekend was the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin putting it out there that Jalen Ramsey is most likely going to get the assignment of the number one receiver on the opposing team that they play this season. Interesting development, because you do have a guy that they feel very good about in Joey Porter that they drafted 2 years ago, and then Darius Slay is also on the team. So that's 3 really good cornerbacks, all who are probably worthy in one way, shape, or form of shadowing a team's number one receiver. But Mike Tomlin comes out and says that Jalen Ramsey is going to get that assignment each week. I initially thought it was just for the joint practices that they were going to have against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought that was going to be the whole thing there. But apparently, the talk is that this is what's going to happen throughout the season. And, however guys feel about it, Mike Tomlin said, whether it's Jalen Ramsey or it's other guys in the locker room that think they deserve that, Jalen is going to get that call. So that's going to be very interesting. I was terribly interested in seeing how they were going to fit all these parts together. What would Jalen Ramsey do? Was he going to be solely an outside corner? Was he going to play some inside? Were they going to try and have him take some reps at safety? Because, you did send Minkah Fitzpatrick over to the Miami Dolphins in the trade. So how were you going to make up for whatever you lost with Minkah being out of the safety position? So I think that's still a developing situation, but I found that development to be rather interesting. All right, I wanted to jump now into the questions that I receive. I asked for questions that were not so much on technique. If you have those questions, feel free to always ask those questions about technique, strategy, and so on and so forth.
Parents, dads out there, if you're trying to get your kid to the next level, you're trying to get him to the level of elite skills, you've got to use these resources that I have available to you. One is my book, 101 DB Tips. It's the greatest book out there for DBs. Everything on covering man, playing zone, playing corner, playing safety, how to study film. It's an excellent resource for your young tyke that's trying to become a big-time DB. Also, the All Eyes DB Camp members area is a superpower. Over 200 videos in there on all types of things like how to play coverages, technique, strategy breakdowns, and more. 2 great resources for your young guy if you're trying to get him to the next level. Take advantage of them. Link down in the description below.
But I found it interesting that I got questions having to deal with I think my history on playing defensive back and coaching defensive backs, as well as the mentality that it takes to play defensive back. And so in answering some of these questions about myself, I'm going to be able to give you guys maybe some insight into the mentality of playing this position, because it's a big part of it. And then I'm going to also end this Indy Drills podcast with a whole talk on a DB mentality, because it is indeed important. But I want to answer these questions. I think I'm not answering these in the order in which they came in, but the best order possible. So the first one is Carlin in Philadelphia asking, how did I become a DB? A very simple question, one that I think I'm going to have some fun answering. I started playing football later in life, at least compared to, most guys down here in Florida. Originally born in New York, came to Florida at age 10, didn't start playing football right away, didn't play organized football in New York City because that just wasn't a thing. There wasn't a big Saturday, you go play football at the park for some league. Just wasn't a big thing growing up in Brooklyn, New York. So I came down here. First thing I played was soccer. I have some Caribbean roots from my mother's side. So, That was a big influence. So first thing I played was soccer. And without sparing you the whole details of how I became a football player, that's probably another question sometime down the road. Ended up playing football at 12 years old, started about 11, 12 years old. And primarily a running back because, I had speed, I was athletic, and that's the first place you put a kid, at least back in those days. First thing you're trying to do is put that kid at running back. Maybe nowadays they might throw a kid at wide receiver or something like that. So running back, obviously, that was great for me because pretty much all of my idols watching football up to that point had been running backs. A guy by the name of Wendell Tyler, for anyone that age would remember it like that guy because I was a Los Angeles Rams fan. And then that gravitated into Eric Dickerson, someone that you guys may know more of. And so these were the kind of guys that I looked at and always found myself looking at the running backs in football. Walter Payton, guys like that I would take a look at. And so it was great to be a running back. You get the football, you get to score touchdowns and so on and so forth. So that was the extent of, my football experience, except for every now and then I would get thrown on defense, go play corner, right? So, but corner, you got to understand as a youth football player, even at 12 years old, back in the day, the football was run more. People ran a wishbone and ran an I formation, and it was heavy run. There wasn't a whole lot of passing. Matter of fact, we were one of the only Optimist football teams, which, by the way, that was Pasadena Lakes. Shout out to Pasadena Lakes Optimist in Pembroke Pines, Florida. We had a kid that could throw the ball by the name of Ryan Collins. Ryan Collins ended up becoming a quarterback at the University of Miami, but one of the few guys at that age that could throw the football with for length and accuracy. Damn good youth football quarterback that, continued to mature into being a great quarterback in high school and on into college. So there wasn't a whole lot to do out there at cornerback. You just stand out there, wait for a run to come your way, and you go make a tackle. Just didn't, not very glamorous. So a friend of mine, actually Ryan's older brother, said, "Hey, I think you're a defensive back." I took that as a slap in the face. Like, what are you saying? Are you saying I'm not good enough? I took it as a negative. Like, am I not a good enough running back that you're suggesting that I play another position? And one, oh, by the way, that's very boring and doesn't seem to be very important to the team. Is this what you're telling me? So I originally had a negative feeling towards defensive back. But as I moved more into high school, I started warming up to the idea of defensive back more. I wasn't getting as big as some of these running backs. I was a smaller player. And, though I was still quick and fast, you just start wondering, hey, I'm body wise, look more like a defensive back than I do a running back. Nevertheless, in high school, I was primarily a running back. And, I played both ways in high school as I left Florida, moved out to California, out in Moreno Valley, California. I went out there for my junior and senior year of high school, primarily on offense, wing back, running back. We ran the wing T, but I also played cornerback. And around this time, a guy by the name of Deion Sanders, we already spoke about Shiloh. Most of you young guys know him as Coach Prime, but a guy by the name of Deion Sanders was starting to become really, really big time at Florida State. All right. He came to Florida State as Deion Sanders. He eventually blossomed into primetime Neon Deion, and he brought such a flash and a flair to the position that it was undeniable. And suddenly this position that I thought was very, very boring, not all that meaningful to a team, and just certainly not a glory position like running back where you get to score touchdowns and everyone knows who you are and the girls know who you are because you're scoring touchdowns. This guy was turning the position on its ear, from the way that he dressed, from the way that he behaved after he made plays and getting interceptions and pick sixes and just bringing a total new look to the position. My eyes started getting drawn there. Around that same time, I'm playing more and more defensive back. Obviously, I'm in high school now, so they're throwing the ball more. So there's more opportunities to get my hand on the ball, make a big play, things like that. So I really got into this whole defensive back thing. All right. Even so far as to putting the headband around my neck like Deion, just drawing some attention to what it is that I'm doing out there. Because I had this feeling, if you're working so hard at something like what it is to play football, get on the field and do your best, you want some attention and notoriety for that. And that was just my whole thought about this. I'm putting an awful lot of work into this, and I need you to see me. And Deion showed me the way to do it. So I followed in his footsteps and added my own little attention getting devices on there. But that's how I started playing corner. And then I started getting recruited. And it wasn't for offense. There might have been one school, San Diego State, that thought about putting me on offense. Everyone else wanted to put me on defense. And that's just really how I started taking to defensive back more and more. Though I was playing it in my senior year, playing running back in my senior year, I started thinking less and less about playing on offense as I continued into college. And so I started studying defensive back more. And that back in my day meant you're recording games on TV and I go back and watch. So around that time, not only am I watching Deion, but I'm recording the Buffalo Bills, who had great defensive backs, would watch the corners technique. Primarily, the Kansas City Chiefs always had great defensive backs. So I would watch them. The Oakland Raiders or the Los Angeles Raiders at that point in time always had great defensive backs that bumped and run and played press coverage. So I watched a whole bunch of that and try to mimic my game to what it is that I saw those guys doing. And then, of course, I went into college as a defensive back. And, how that whole thing went is probably another question down the road. But in answer how I became a defensive back, I just slowly moved into that. And it got accelerated when Deion Sanders came around and put a whole new swing and switch onto the defensive back position. So, Carlin, thanks you for that question. Really, really appreciate it. All right. From that great question and story about that, on to this. Desmond in California asked me, what's my worst moment as a defensive back? Oh, I can clearly tell you that. So after my high school football career at Canyon Springs High School in Moreno Valley, I go to Long Beach State University. The whole story of how I got there, again, another question for another time. But I'm at Long Beach State. I'm playing defensive back, and I'm starting as a freshman. All right, I didn't start the first few games, obviously, but then I became a starter at a certain point during the season. Don't remember when it was. Might have been third or fourth game. I'm a starting corner on the team. And one of our rivals was a school called Cal State Fullerton. For you folks out west, you will remember that. Neither one of these schools are playing football anymore. Neither Long Beach State nor Cal State Fullerton play football anymore. And that just goes to show you how well they were doing it at the time. But anyway, so we're playing against our rival, and they happen to be a team that really spreads out, throws the football around. So I'm out there. I'm a starting corner. And for whatever reason, I'd been holding my own. I'd been doing well as a starting corner for Long Beach State. And I'm feeling proud that I'm the first freshman to start a football game at Long Beach State in the last 5 years. Doing great, feeling good about myself. For whatever reason, Cal State Fullerton decided I was going to be the center of their attention on that day. They were going after me. Perhaps they just looked through that roster and the starting looked through the depth chart and saw a freshman starting there, and he weighs 167 pounds. We're going after that guy. And go after me they did. And while on a lot of these plays, I had really great coverage, the guy that I was on was a really good point of attack guy, a good 50-50 ball guy. And not only did he have some size and he was a senior and he had good strength, his hands were strong as hell. So I would be right there on this guy's hip and he'd make an amazing catch. He dove around me one play. I thought I'd put this guy out of bounds. He came back around me, threw his long arms out, caught the football on me. They hit a slant on me, tried to make a tackle, ran right through it, gained a whole bunch of yards. So they were having their way. I think they ended up catching a fade touchdown on me. So I'm having a hard time. Though I'm battling, I'm having a hard time. They're getting these catches on me. They're moving the ball, and we're in a back-and-forth football game. So it's not like we're handling Cal State Fullerton, and the team could absorb the plays that I was not making out there. So it's a back-and-forth game. The game is in the balance. There's a chance that they might win this game. And the clincher for me was, now I start getting in my head. Obviously, I'm a freshman. I'm having my welcome to college football moment. And now I'm thinking a little bit too much about what's happening to me, and I'm allowing it to affect me. So whereas I was this guy with a ton of confidence, arrogant even as a freshman, I have to admit on that day I was losing some confidence in what was going on. I was having a really bad day, and it was starting to affect me mentally. The clincher was we're in, and their offense is maybe at their own 30-yard line. They throw and catch a slant on the other side of the field. I see it from where I am, and I come running towards the receiver. So imagine he caught a slant. He's running through the middle of the field. I'm coming from my side of the field, and it's going to be a head-on collision. So realizing he's not moving, I'm not moving, and let's get to it. I put my head down to go dive in and make this tackle, and my head is down. I'm not seeing what I'm hitting. I violated all those tackling rules. So I put my head down to go hit this guy. He sidesteps, and not only do I miss the tackle, I take out the DB that was closing in on him, took him out, and the guy gets a clear path to the end zone, 70-yard touchdown. As I'm coming off the field, my DB coach, Willie Brown, the late Willie Brown, Hall of Famer, who eventually ended up becoming the head coach at Long Beach State, comes up to me, and he has a pained look on his face. And as I think back at it, he probably was having a discussion with a defensive coordinator or a head coach, George Allen at the time, on there about taking me out of the game. Something it didn't seem like he wanted to do, but his hand was forced. So he came there and painfully told me that we are going to go with another guy. We're putting another guy into the game. And I had no choice but to accept it. You know, I was having a bad day, and to a certain degree, man, I agreed with that decision. You know, I don't want to be the reason that we lose this football game. I'm not having a good time right now. And, you know, okay, let me sit and cool off and figure out what the hell was going on. So another DB went in there, and he handled his business, and we ended up winning the game by 2 points, as it turns out. So who knows? If I stayed in there operating the way that I was operating, the kind of game that I was having, we might have lost the game. But it's the worst I've ever felt at playing defensive back. Because in high school, I did my thing. All right. You weren't going to throw the ball to my side of the field and get anything other than perhaps my hands on the ball going the other way. I just never experienced a bad game in high school. Never experienced a game anywhere close to that after that. Because, you know, I went on to play my second year at Long Beach State. Pretty damn good defensive back. Only gave up one touchdown that next year, and I really made a name for myself, good enough to come to the University of Miami. And I can't ever remember giving up a touchdown playing defensive back at the University of Miami. Maybe it happened, and if it did, it might have been one. I had a good unit around me, and look, you know, I'm not afraid to say it. I was a pretty good defensive back. So that right there was my worst moment. It did require me to, you know, get back on my feet mentally. As it turns out, went to a house party later that night where members of Cal State Fullerton's football team were there, and they were giving it to me. They were talking a little bit of crap to me, and, you know, I had to eat that. You know, I obviously gave my words back and, you know, whatever, but it was something for me to overcome. But I eventually got back on my feet and did what it is I had to do. But that right there was my worst moment, right there in front of all those fans, college football. A college football packed house, if you could have that, because it was a rivalry game, and I shitted the bed, for lack of a better term. Great question there, Desmond. Appreciate that and allow me to get this story out. Final question I'm going to answer is from Lucas. Lucas is in Florida. He says, who did you look up to as a DB growing up? Well, I think I already answered that question, but we'll dig a little bit deeper. Obviously, Deion Sanders, the whole reason for me warming up to the whole defensive back thing. However, he wasn't just the only guy that, you know, he was the foremost guy, but he wasn't the only guy. Before him, there was a guy by the name of Leroy Irvin. If you're older than 45 years old, you know who I'm talking about. If you're a Los Angeles Rams fan, you guys know who I'm talking about. Hopefully, we'll get a picture of him up here on the screen. Leroy was not a guy with swag, and he wore number 47 for the Los Angeles Rams in the 80s. But this was a guy that always found a way to get his hands on the football. He was a punt returner. He would return punts for touchdowns, and being a big Los Angeles Ram fan, that was someone that I saw making plays at a position with a body type like mine. And if you guys can notice it, maybe parents watching this might notice it, coaches, adults will really notice it, or maybe players at this point have noticed it. You tend to be fans of people that look like you when you're growing up and you are following a sport. So if you're a smaller body type and you play a position like that, you tend to look at guys like that. If you're a big guy, you're playing defensive line, offensive line, you tend to look at those guys. Those are the guys you tend to idolize, because it would be crazy for you to be an offensive lineman in Little League and high school football, and your favorite player is some defensive back. That's just not how that works. So yes, Leroy Everin was a guy that looked like a guy my size, would play a position that, I may possibly play. So he was a defensive back that I looked at. Now, when I really started playing defensive back hardcore and devoting some of my mental time to that position, as I told you, I would watch the Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, the Los Angeles Raiders, the Cleveland Browns had a great duo of corners, Hanford, Dixon, and Frank Minifield. The Chiefs always had Albert Lewis and Kevin Ross. The Buffalo Bills had they had a guy named James Williams, and on the other side, a guy named Nate Odoms. He had a ridiculous stance. He'd get super low to the ground in his stance, and I just found that fascinating. So I would look at a lot of what he did. The Raiders had, they eventually ended up getting Albert Lewis from the Chiefs, but they had guys like Terry McDaniels, and back in the day, they had, Lester Hayes. I don't know if I paid as much attention to him back in the days, but they had guys like that. So these were some of the guys that I watched. But anyone who played press coverage, I was filming them, because that's kind of what I did in high school. And so I almost call them the Tennessee Titans, but they were the Houston Oilers back then. Their guys would play a lot of press coverage. So Bubba McDowell, who went to the University of Miami, like me, I would watch that guy play, and Chris Dishman. I'm throwing some names out here for the older crew, but for you younger guys, just know that though you don't recognize or know any of these names, what I did do was study a whole bunch of defensive backs. So film the games, watch them over and over, rewind, play, and just watch their techniques, how they operated, as much as you can get from that in a television copy. I was in there taking a look at those things and really trying to apply it to my game. Because in all honesty, I had a good defensive back coach in high school, but not really long on technique, more about making sure that within the scheme, we were in the right places. And we didn't do a whole bunch. Cover 3, cover 2, 3 cloud, 3 sky, that kind of stuff. We didn't get very exotic, because passing games weren't very complex back in that day. So you can get away with running those few basic coverages and just really honing in on your execution. So a lot of technique that I found from those things. Oh, and cover 1 and, man coverage. We just call it man coverage. I don't ever remember a cover 1 or cover 0 call. It was just man coverage. And we just understood that, where we're going to be. There was a safety in the middle, or maybe not, but I always took it as the mentality as, okay, this is my man. He doesn't catch the ball, basically. One day I will tell you guys about my press stance and technique when I used to line up in against guys in high school. Kind of funny to think about it now, but nevertheless, technique I had to grab from watching those games, whether live or on tape, and that's where I grabbed a lot of what it is that I knew technique wise, especially with press as a corner. And to realize that back then, that's what I had to do. I had to set a VCR, and sometimes it would you'd set it to record. Sometimes it would do it, sometimes it wouldn't. We could talk about whether it was my error or just a failure of the technology. And then you got to run that back and rewind it. And there's no just skipping ahead. You had to rewind. If you wanted to see something in the fourth quarter, you had to fast forward through the first, second, third quarter. There was no jumping ahead like you can now on any of these playback devices. And then, okay, wait. I wanted to see something in the second quarter. Go back and do that. It was, compared to what you have available today, quite the thing. All right. But I did it because I wanted to be as good as I could be at the position. And that's something I'm urging you guys to do. put your time in, study. You guys got to study because there's a big mental component to this game. From the time I started playing football, I was good physically. Though I was small, I was strong. All we did was lift weights when I was little, and I was always fast. But I never relied just on that. There was just something about me that I needed to know where a receiver was going, what play was coming before the play happened. I never really liked reacting late or just trying to figure it out once the ball was snapped and having to react to everything. I loved being able to see a player positioned in a certain place and have an idea of what was coming so that I could predict it, go jump it, and go make a play. That was a big thing for me, despite whatever physical advantages I might have had out on the field. That was important to me. And I'm telling you, that's going to be a big part of your success as a player or as a coach of players. Get these guys to understand what is coming next so that they can play with a certain amount of anticipation. Because if you're just going to be out there reacting to whatever is happening in front of you as it happens, you're just going to constantly find yourself being a step too late. You know, they say it's a game of inches. You're just going to always come up a few inches short of making the play, making the pass breakup, or making the catch. You're just going to come up short a whole hell of a lot. A certain amount of your game has to be anticipation. The anticipation comes from studying and then executing and believing what you're seeing out on the field. But to answer your question, that is, those are some of the guys that I looked up to coming up. But the foremost guy, obviously, being prime time, because he just changed my whole thinking on playing the position. All right, time now for our final segment, and it just ties in really, really nice with everything that I've kind of talked about today, and that is having a DB mentality. There are several components to playing defensive back. Of course, there's the physical part, being strong, being fast, being quick, and, having the proper footwork and balance and all those other things. A lot of the stuff that I train with the guys that I take out on the field in my whole, training business that I do. The other part is having the football IQ. All right. I just talked about it, being able to understand what is happening in front of you. First of all, being able to understand the coverages that you're in and the defense that you are running on your team. And then having an idea of how the offense is trying to attack you and then putting yourself in position to stop what they're doing or make plays. There's the IQ part of it. So there's the physical part of it. And then there's the IQ part of it that comes from studying and taking your reps in the game. There is a final part that probably doesn't get talked about enough amongst young defensive backs, but that is, and it might be the most important. I consider it to be the most important part of playing defensive back, and that is your mentality. Why do I say it's the most important part? It's because that's going to control everything else that you do. How you feel about yourself, how you feel about the way that you play and what it is you're going to be able to do will control how much you lift, how much you work on your speed, how much you study. If you think you're a great player and you are out there to make plays, you will study more, you will lift more, you will run more. But let's dig a little bit deeper into what a DB mentality is. You've probably been told this, and maybe you've been told this in a different way. But the truth of the matter is that the more you play defensive back, the better the competition that you faced, you will get beat. You've got some young players out there that go completely in the tank if they give up a catch. They think, I don't know, we're still in that Revis era mentality where we can just go line up against someone and they will have 0 catches. And if I did that, if I held a guy to 0 catches, then I am a worthy defensive back. But if they caught a couple, I'm not. I'm not that great of a player if a guy caught a pass on me. Get out of that mindset, okay? If you're facing good competition, guys will catch footballs on you. They will catch touchdowns on you. You will give up touchdowns. I got news for you. We glorify guys like Deion Sanders and Darrelle Revis and Champ Bailey and a couple of other names. We glorify them because we show the highlights of all the great plays that they made, the pick sixes, the big pass breakups, and all that. If you go back and watch, you will realize these guys gave up catches and they gave up touchdowns. We tend to romanticize the past, but you go look at any of those names that I just gave up and you really watch games, not highlight videos, you will see them giving up catches, giving up touchdowns. So if these were the best to ever play the game and that happened, why don't you think this could happen to you? You know what made those guys great is the catches and the touchdowns were meaningless to them. Sure, they cared, but they didn't carry it with them. They understood that it's a part of the game. If I'm facing a good receiver, and when I'm talking about guys that played in the NFL, so you're lining up in front of a good receiver each and every week. Might not have been a guy with a name, but in the NFL, on each and any week, any guy playing NFL football for any team can ruin your day if you just let him. So they gave up catches and touchdowns, but the DB mentality in them did not let that stop them from doing what it is that they always do. So if you just gave up a 70-yard touchdown pass, you come back, you're in the game next time in defense, nothing changes. You have the same technique and you have the same mentality as you go there. I'm the man. I'm the guy. All right. I'm a badass. That's the DB mentality. All right. You have to put that out of your head. It's a part of the game. I have said this more than once on this podcast. Giving up a catch or even a touchdown is not as awful as you think. Sometimes it could be a really great blessing because quarterbacks, they have emotions too. They're controlled by the same things you're controlled by because we're all human beings. And if they get success throwing to a side of the field against a certain player, they feel confident enough to try it again. What that means is you're going to have another opportunity to make a play. So if you just gave up a 60, 70-yard touchdown pass, you come back down. What do you think that quarterback's thinking the next time there's a pass play? Hey, I had success here before. Why don't I try this again? And if you are in the right frame of mind mentally, that means every time you line up, no matter what happened to play before, good or bad, you realize I am the man. I am the shit. I'm built for this. Then you have put yourself in a position mentally to now make a play. So when that quarterback goes there for that second or third time, you are being given the opportunity to get your hands on the football and make an interception or a pick six or a really, really big play for your team. Now, if a quarterback goes over there 2-3 times early in the game, you get the ball down or you have really great coverage and the ball goes off the receiver's hands or he has to sail it out of bounds, each time after that, he starts thinking, I don't know if I want to go over there because coaches and quarterbacks nowadays really love their completion percentage. That's a really big thing. That's an ego stat for them. So if I'm going to go 50%, 60% throwing over here, I might want to try over here so I can keep that, lovely 70% completion rate and my great passer rating because guys on the offense really love stats. You'd be surprised how much that they do. So, yeah, you're doing a great job over here, but after 3-4 tries, they didn't get anything. You might get no action for the rest of the game. Now, I'm certainly not telling you to give up a touchdown if you could stop it or give up a catch if you could stop it. But the fact that you did should have no bearing on how well you think of yourself when you line back up. Just realize you're going to get another opportunity. Any completed pass on your side encourages that quarterback to go over there again. And if you've got the DB mentality, which is the next play is going to be my play, all right, then you can put yourself in a position to make a play. How many times have you seen a guy having an okay or a not so okay game, all right? Not looking his best, not the way you expected him to play, and they're catching a couple or they caught a couple touchdowns on him, and then suddenly all of a sudden you see him running the other way with a pick six because they kept trying. They kept trying over there, all right? You kind of sometimes got to think of yourself like a slot machine at a casino. All right. If that quarterback's pulling the handle and he's getting a couple coins out of it, and he's pulling the handle and he's getting a couple coins out of it, he's going to keep playing. All right. He's going to keep playing over there. And then eventually he's going to come up bust because he's going to stay on that machine too long and it's going to take all this money. Your mentality as a DB has to be, okay, eventually I'm going to take this guy's money. Keep playing with me if you want to. Keep throwing over here. Keep trying me, please. Eventually, I'm going to make you pay dearly for doing this. And that's how you have that DB mentality. To sum it up in a nutshell, I don't care what happens out on that field. Keep playing. You missed a tackle. You jumped up and you got mossed. Guy took a ball away from you. Guy caught a pass, broke your tackle, ran 50, 60 yards for a touchdown. If the coach is still putting you out there, you now will have another opportunity to make a play. So just understand that part. Every time you give up a play, you will be given another opportunity to make a play. You have to be strong mentally as a defensive back. And I know how it is in this day and age, right? I understand it. If you had a game like I was having for Long Beach State against Cal State Fullerton that day, and you went on Twitter later, or you maybe didn't even go on Twitter, you had all these notifications on your phone when you came back. People on Twitter, people in your Instagram mentions, they're commenting on pictures you put up 2 months ago in your street clothes out somewhere, and they're putting football comments on there about what happened to you in this game, and you read all of those. They could defeat you mentally. If you're not strong enough to look at that stuff and not care, then don't look at that stuff. Be off of your social media during the football season if you can't mentally handle that. But outside of that, you should care less about anything someone who sits in the stands and can't do what you do is commenting about you playing football. If you really think about that, it makes absolutely no sense to give a damn about any of that. That's like a male trying to tell a female about what it's like to be pregnant. You can't get pregnant, okay? You can't carry a child. So why are you talking to me about that? It's ridiculous. All right? So you should not care at all about anything that they have to say. Read the comment, whatever. Just keep playing. Just keep going. So at the end of the day, the DB mentality is this. No matter what happens out on that field, the next play is coming. The next play is an opportunity. Every time I line up, I am the man. I am built for this. I'm going to make a play. The next play is the play for me. That is the DB mentality. And that is the final element to everything that you're doing as a defensive back. So you spent all summer running, lifting, getting yourself physically prepared, doing your drill work, getting out of your back pedals, catching the football, working on your press, all that good stuff. Hopefully you spend some time studying some film and your playbook so you understand how all of your defenses work, not just what you do, but what the guys around you are doing. You understand how all of these offenses are going to attack you, what their formations mean, what their splits mean by the wide receivers, and every other clue that you can get. The final part to making you the all-state DB, the all-American DB, the NFL all-pro is your mentality, because things are going to happen on the field that are unexpected, and you have to be able to respond quickly mentally to it. Quickly. And that means you don't get blown away. You don't go in the tank when a bad play happens. Simply think to yourself, okay.
If you're a brand new coach and you've been thrusted into a job and you're kind of overwhelmed, I've got a great resource for you. The All Eyes DB Camp members area will get you up to speed so you can get your guys in the right position to make plays and make you look like an all-star coach. I've got everything in there from quizzes, coverages explained, technique breakdowns, strategy sessions, everything you need to ramp up your coaching ability and turn your guys into playmakers. Hit the link down below. Come join us in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. Greatness awaits you.
I'm going to get another opportunity. They had success there. They're coming here again, and I'm going to have another opportunity to make them play. You should get excited about that. I'm going to have an opportunity to get that interception that I want, or to get the pick six that I really, really want, that I've been dreaming about all week. And why? Because, I gave up that play. I didn't want to, but these guys are going to come over again. And if I'm in the right frame of mind, I'm going to make them pay. I'm going to even up the score, or maybe even I uneven the score, right? The guy got a 40-yard catch, but they didn't score, but you got a pick six. Who's net positive there? That's you. So I'm going to urge all you guys to have that DB mentality. Don't go in the tank in practice or in a game when a ball is caught. There's another play coming. Be ready for it. That's going to be your chance and your opportunity to make a really, really great, memorable play. All right. That's going to do it here for me. On the way out, guys, I would appreciate it if you got helped by this video to like it and share it. As always, drop a comment, man, even if it's a thumbs up emoji or whatever. Drop your questions here. I forgot to say that in the questions segment. If you have a question, if it's a personal question to me about me playing defensive back, the mentality of playing defensive back, or how I became a coach, player, whatever, something along those lines, drop it in the comment section down below. If you have a question on technique or strategy, drop it in the comment section down below. Love reading those and really loved answering the questions that I had today. If you're just listening to this and you're not watching it on YouTube, you could always send your question to me via email to cwilson@alleyedsdbcamp.com. Finally, resources. You become the best at what you do, especially defensive back, by taking advantage of your resources. I already talked about this major one right here, picking up a copy of this book, 101 DB Tips. Some of the best, no, not some of, the best advice you're going to get on playing the game of football as a defensive back, how to train in the offseason, how to study film, how to play corner, how to play safety, how to play nickel, how to play man, how to play zone. It's all right here in this book, available as a soft cover or as an ebook. We'll have a link to it down in the description below. And then there's the superpower, which is the All Eyes DB Camp members area. Over 300 posts in there on all types of things, strategy, technique being broken down. I have quizzes in there. Of course, we talk strategy. There's coverages explained in there, teach tape, all kinds of great stuff there in the All Eyes DB Camp members area. If you're trying to level up your play and become the best that you could be, you need to be in there right now. Link to that down in the description below. So that's it for me. Appreciate you guys watching this episode of the Indy Drills Podcast. And until next time, All Eyes DB Camp. Consistency breeds results.